No matter what Kamala Harris says, if Kamala Harris wins this election and takes the Congress with a down ballot and the Democrats control the Senate, taxes are going to go up. Even if not directly, indirectly, if she goes after businesses, they're going to raise their prices. That amounts to a tax. Here she is talking about her tax plan.
In terms of their taxes. Right now, Anderson, you know, the document, it is well documented that some of the richest people in our country have gotten away with a zero tax rate.
But if you're earning $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 under your plan, there's a good chance your taxes go up.
We can't have this conversation without knowing it's a very complicated situation, right? If you're talking about a small business owner, I'm going to cut taxes for small businesses, right? Because I know that they need the overhead, the money that they need for overhead to actually benefit the growth of their business, which benefits our economy as a whole.
I have no idea what she's talking about. If you're talking about mid-sized contractors, perhaps small law firms, family-owned businesses, they are going to pay more in taxes. Joining me now to discuss the IRS announcing new federal income tax brackets for 2025 is the president of the National Taxpayers Union, Pete Sepp. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
All right, I have a graphic here of the 2024 to 2025 tax bracket. And what I noticed there is, for all this talk of a progressive tax code, the top tax bracket taps out at about a little over $600,000. So someone earning about $620,000 is going to pay the same rate as a Hollywood celebrity making $30 million per picture.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Plus the fact that the upper tax brackets are paying more than their so-called fair share. You take a look at the top 1% of earners. They account for 40% of all federal income taxes, and they only make about 20% of all the income. They're pulling twice the load in taxes relative to their income. This is a highly progressive tax system, far more so than what you would find over in those European socialist paradises. Why is that? Because socialism costs a lot, and everybody, including the middle class, pays a lot more. Value-added taxes, tax brackets that only the rich have to encounter in this country are commonplace over there. That's what's going to happen in this country if we go in the direction that Kamala Harris wants to take it.
Now, look, I'm a fan of the flat or the fair tax. And I will tell you, I used to be a fair tax guy. I'll tell you why I'm a flat tax guy. I'll tell you why I'm a fair tax guy, because then we would all pay our taxes anonymously. There is not a line of text in the Constitution that says the government needs to know how much we earn in order to tax us. The progressive tax code just gives fodder to class warfare. But I've said it like this, and tell me if I'm crazy. If the Democrats really want the rich to pay their fair share, their donors in big tech, in Hollywood, all these pop singers that are campaigning for Kamala Harris, I'll give them this. We'll go back to the Bill Clinton era tax rates of 39.5% at $2 million. 1% per million compounded, but a flat rate for everyone under $2 million. We'll see how quick rich Democrat donors reject that one.
Yeah, it's very interesting. These consumption tax proposals, such as the fair tax, have their advantages and disadvantages. But when you think of two advantages, the first one is everyone would see right on their cash register receipt how much their federal government is costing them every time they buy something. And no matter how much money you make, it eventually gets spent, either by yourself or your heirs, your relatives, whomever. And so eventually all that money, whether it's $1 billion from one person or $1,000 from one person, eventually gets taxed. You'd have to police the system, but you'd have fewer points in the system to police than the current income tax.
What do you think? I really liked Rick Scott's proposal that you got to pay $100, right? He put it at $100. Everybody has to pay something. The idea that we're going to institute an earned income tax credit, we're going to usher in tens of millions of people into this country who are likely to fall below any form of taxation. We're just allowing people to vote for the spending with it costing them nothing. Therein lies the problem. If we cross the threshold where the numeric majority are not paying taxes, they could vote to take whatever they want from the numeric minority.
It's a difficult value proposition. I mean, almost everyone in this country pays some kind of tax, if not income tax, then payroll tax or sales tax. But the burdens are widely different depending on not only how much money you make, but what kind of profession you're in, how you conduct your business. All of these things, which we call lateral fairness in the tax code, matter as much as what we call longitudinal fairness. We should be looking across the income scale, not just up and down the income scale when we're talking about tax fairness.
I was having a back and forth. We actually put the receipts up on this program between myself and Mark Cuban. And he was in complete denial that Kamala Harris is pushing for a net worth or unrealized gains tax. And I had to send him several articles quoting Kamala Harris. That is the real danger. The Democrats know, you want to know where the real cash cow is? It's in suburban home ownership. They would love to get a federal property tax, and it wouldn't be a big burden because your county property tax assessor already has that information.
Well, and of course, here's where inflation comes in. There was just an announcement of the tax brackets being adjusted for inflation, the standard deduction. There are other parts of the federal tax code and state tax codes that have no kind of inflation protection built into them. The biggest one is capital gains. Yeah, sure, the brackets are index protected for inflation, but not the amount of gain that you report. You're forced to report phantom gains that are just due to inflation on your investment and pay taxes on them. That's utterly wrong. That's why we have an entire project, inflationtaxrelief.com, to try and arouse public attention over this and move public officials to do something about it. It's totally unfair. And for homeowners, it's the same way. The lifetime exclusion from capital gains tax when you sell your home hasn't been touched since the 1990s. Inflation has eroded the value of that.
All right, so let me ask you, what do you think the tax brackets would look like if Kamala Harris gets elected and there's a Democrat House and a Democrat Senate?
The top bracket would definitely go above 40% from the current 35, 36. There would be surtaxes put into place above that would probably push the rate closer to 50. States would be emboldened to increase their rates as well. We would also see all kinds of denials and clawbacks of deductions that currently exist up and down the income scale as they tinker with all kinds of proposals for home ownership or child and dependent care. I'm sure they'll pile on to what Donald Trump said earlier this week for a child and dependent care credit. We have to stop thinking about little carve-outs and start thinking about how the big picture looks in our tax system. Let's have one standard deduction. Let's have fewer rates, broader base, make this system simpler. We can do that and still raise revenue off it. Maybe not as much as liberal Democrats want, but certainly enough to fund the legitimate functions of government.
Well, to wrap this up, we know that the CBO is garbage in, garbage out, right? When they say, well, under Eisenhower, there's a 90% tax rate. Nobody paid it. Just because
That's right.
You say, if we raise the tax, we'll get this amount of revenue. Well, that's if everyone does the exact same thing they were doing before, not adjusting for the new imposition of the taxes. So when they say, well, we have a study, if we raise this on billionaires, well, that depends on what they invest in or or don't invest in. Simply saying, let's raise taxes to get more money doesn't mean we get more money. Donald Trump saw revenue rise when he lowered taxes based on John F. Kennedy's plan. Now, I'd love to spend all day on that. I'm out of time. We can talk again soon. Thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. Let's do it again.
All right. You know how we wrap.